You have given more than you had, to people who needed you, to relationships that cost you something real, to a love that was genuine and total and that left you with less than you started with. And you are still standing, still giving, still showing up. This message is for the specific exhaustion of someone who loves the way you love. There is a kind of love that costs everything. Not the love of someone who gives casually. Not the love of someone who offers what is comfortable and holds back what is costly. But the love of someone who goes all the way in. Who stays when it would have been easier to leave. Who gives when the giving has already taken more than they had. Who shows up in the darkness of other people's lives with everything they have. Not because it is easy, not because it does not cost them, but because the love in them is too real and too deep and too directed by something greater than their own capacity to sustain it, to do anything less. You know this love. Not as a concept, as a lived experience, as the specific weight of someone who has loved others through seasons that required more than love should reasonably require. You have been the person someone called at the worst moment. You have been the presence that held things together when everything was falling apart. You have given in relationships what could not be taken back, what left you with less than you had before you gave it. And you have done it again and again. Not because you did not feel the cost, but because the love in you did not know how to calculate the cost before it gave. And this love, this specific and costly and total way of loving that you carry, is one of the most precious and most rare things that exists in a world where most love is conditional, and most giving is calculated, and most presence is offered only when the offering does not require too much. What you carry is not a burden to be corrected. It is a gift to be understood, and understanding it. Understanding what it is and where it comes from and what it is for changes everything about how you carry it and what you do with the exhaustion it sometimes produces. Your enemies have watched this love and drawn conclusions from it. They have seen the way you give and the way it costs you, and the way you still show up even when the cost has exceeded what seems reasonable. And some of them have taken advantage of this, have given you their weight knowing you would carry it, have taken what you offered without asking what it cost, have returned to your generosity again and again without ever wondering whether the well was being replenished. And the exhaustion that this has produced in you, the specific depletion of someone whose love has been received without being returned in the same measure, is a real wound. It deserves to be named honestly before it is interpreted spiritually. But here is what your enemies did not understand when they observed the way you love. They did not understand that the love you carry is not yours alone, that it is too large for a human source, that it flows from something that does not run dry the way human love runs dry, that what they took from you was never solely your own to begin with, and that the God who placed this love in you and who directed it toward the people he placed in your path was never unaware of the cost, was never indifferent to the depletion, was never absent from the moments when the giving left you with less than you had. He saw every one of those moments, and this message tells you what he was doing in them. Chosen. I am speaking directly to you who are watching this video at this exact moment in your life. To you who know the specific exhaustion of someone who loves the way you love. To you who have wondered in the quiet hours whether what you give is sustainable, whether God actually asks for this much, whether the love you carry is a gift or a wound, or both at the same time. This message exists to answer those questions, with a precision I hope reaches the deepest places where the exhaustion of your love lives. Let me describe with precision what loving others at the level you love costs from the inside, not from a comfortable distance, from the real place where the weight of that love lives. The first thing this level of love produces is a particular kind of invisibility, because the person who carries everyone else rarely has someone who carries them in return, not because they are unlovable, not because the people around them are incapable of love, but because the way they love, the depth of their presence in the lives of others, the willingness to give beyond what is comfortable, sets a standard that most people around them do not operate at. And the result is an asymmetry in their relationships that produces a specific and persistent loneliness. They know what it feels like to be deeply present with someone in their pain. They rarely know what it feels like to have someone be deeply present with them in theirs. You have been that person in someone's life, the one whose presence made a real difference in a real crisis, whose love held something together that would have fallen apart without it. And you have also been the person who drove home afterward and sat in the silence and felt the weight of what the giving had cost, without anyone asking what it had cost, without anyone offering to carry you the way you had just carried them. And that asymmetry, that persistent imbalance between what you give and what you receive in the relationships that matter most to you, is one of the most quietly painful experiences that this kind of love can produce. There is also something that this level of love does to your relationship with your own needs, because someone who loves the way you love tends to develop over time a very particular relationship with their own needs. A relationship characterized by a subtle but persistent minimization, not a dramatic self-denial, not a conscious decision to have no needs, but a progressive habit of placing your own needs at the bottom of the list, of noticing what others need and responding before you have even registered what you yourself need, of being so practiced at reading the needs of others that your own needs become almost invisible to you. And this habit, built over years of loving in a particular way, can produce a version of yourself that is genuinely uncertain what they need, that has to work to identify their own desires and longings and requirements because the practice of noticing them has been so long neglected. You have the right to feel the cost of loving the way you love. The exhaustion of someone who has given more than they had is a real exhaustion. It is not the sign of a love that was wrong or misguided, or that gave to the wrong people in the wrong way. It is the honest experience of someone whose love is real and deep and costly. And that cost, that genuine and cumulative depletion that comes from loving without reserve, deserves to be named and acknowledged and held with honesty before it is given a spiritual interpretation. There is also something that this kind of love does to the way you understand yourself in relation to God. Because someone who loves the way you love can develop over time a subtle confusion about the source of what they give. The love flows through them. They give it generously and genuinely, and they can begin to feel responsible for replenishing what they give from their own reserves, as if the love were theirs to produce and theirs to maintain and theirs to ensure never runs out. And when the reserves feel depleted, when the giving has taken more than was available, they can experience a form of spiritual guilt, as if the depletion were a failure, as if feeling empty after giving everything were evidence of an insufficient relationship with the God who was supposed to be filling them. That confusion between being a conduit for love and being the source of love is one of the most common and most damaging misunderstandings that the person who loves the way you love can carry. And it deserves to be addressed with a clarity and a tenderness that matches the depth of what it has cost you. There is a final dimension of this wound I want to name honestly. It is the specific pain of having loved people who did not love you back in the same measure, not people who were incapable of love, but people who received what you gave without ever asking what the giving cost, who took your presence and your generosity and your willingness to give without reserve as a feature of the relationship rather than as a gift being offered at a real cost, and who moved on when they no longer needed what you were giving without ever fully acknowledging what they had received. That pain, the pain of love given in full and received without full recognition, is real, and it leaves something in the person who loved that way. A question about whether the giving was worth it, about whether love that costs this much and is received this way deserves to be given again in the same measure. Here is the truth that God wants to place in the deepest layer of your understanding today. The love you carry is not yours alone. It flows from a source that does not run dry. And every time you gave from what felt like your own reserves, God was the silent source behind what you offered. You were never the origin of what you gave. You were always the conduit. Look at what happened with Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane. This is not the Jesus of triumphant miracles and public teaching. This is the Jesus of the most private and most costly moment of his earthly life. In Luke 22 verse 44, it is written, "And being in agony, he prayed more earnestly, and his sweat became like great drops of blood falling down to the ground." The love that was about to give everything, the love that was about to carry the full weight of what it meant to love humanity at the cost of everything, was feeling the weight of that cost in advance. Jesus did not love without feeling the cost of that love. He felt it in his body, in the drops of blood that the intensity of that interior experience produced, and he still gave, not because the cost was not real, but because the love was realer than the cost. Here is the first truth I want to anchor in your understanding. Feeling the cost of love is not a sign that the love is wrong or insufficient, or that you are giving to the wrong people in the wrong way. It is the sign that the love is real. Costless love is not the deepest love. The deepest love knows exactly what it is giving and gives it anyway. And Jesus, who felt the full weight of what his love was about to cost in a garden the night before he gave it, is the most precise model available of what it means to love the way you love. In 1 Corinthians 13 verse 7, Paul describes the nature of genuine love with a specificity that should stop you in your tracks. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Bears, believes, hopes, endures. These are not passive words. These are active and costly words, words that describe a love that stays present under weight, that continues to believe when belief is difficult, that hopes when the evidence for hope is thin, that endures when endurance has already taken everything available. This is the love you carry. And Paul does not describe it as a burden to be corrected. He describes it as the highest form of love that exists. Here is the second truth. The people you have loved through their darkest seasons did not exhaust you. They revealed what was in you. The giving did not take something from you that cannot be replenished. It revealed a capacity for love that most people never develop, because most people never give enough to discover it. And what was revealed in you through the giving, that depth of love, that capacity to stay present in pain, that willingness to give beyond what was comfortable, is not a wound. It is a weapon. It is precisely the capacity that the people you were created to serve most deeply will recognize immediately when they encounter it. And those people, the ones who need exactly the kind of love you carry, are either already in your life or are on their way. T.D. Jakes has said that the people God sends into your life to receive your love are not always the same people he sends to replenish you. That God often replenishes his most costly givers directly, through his own presence, through the specific intimacy that develops between God and those who love the way he loves, with everything, without reserve, at real cost. And that the depletion you have felt in your giving is sometimes the precise condition that has made you most available to receive from God directly what the people around you did not have the capacity to give. Here is the third truth. What you have given to others has not been lost. In Hebrews 6 verse 10, the promise is written with a directness that should reach the places in you where the question of whether the giving was worth it has lived. For God is not unjust so as to overlook your work and the love that you have shown for his name in serving the saints as you still do. God is not unjust. He does not overlook. He has seen every single act of love you have given, every moment of presence that cost you something, every time you showed up when you had nothing left to give and gave anyway, every relationship where you carried more than was carried in return. He saw it all. He records it all. And the justice of God, the divine accounting that sees every act of love given at real cost, will not leave what you have given unacknowledged or unrewarded. Chosen. My question for you today is this. If you could genuinely receive the love you carry, not as a burden you are responsible for sustaining from your own reserves, but as a gift that flows through you from a source that does not run dry, how would you love differently from this moment forward? Let that question find the places in you where the giving has left you most depleted, because those are the places where God has been most present as the silent source behind what you offered. Let me show you with precision what someone looks like who has genuinely understood the nature of the love they carry. Who has stopped trying to sustain it from their own reserves and has begun to receive it as something that flows through them rather than from them? The first transformation is in their relationship with their own depletion. Before this understanding, feeling depleted after a season of costly giving produces guilt, a sense that the depletion is evidence of a deficiency in the relationship with God. That someone who was truly connected to the source would not feel empty after giving, that the emptiness is a spiritual problem to be corrected rather than a natural consequence of real giving to be replenished. After this understanding, the relationship with depletion changes completely. Depletion becomes information rather than accusation. It tells you that real giving happened, that what was offered was genuinely costly rather than carefully calculated, and it signals the need for replenishment rather than the presence of failure. Someone who has genuinely understood this stops carrying the guilt of their depletion and starts receiving the replenishment that the depletion makes available. The depletion itself becomes the invitation to the specific intimacy with God that produces the kind of replenishment that no human relationship can provide. The second transformation is in the way they set boundaries in their loving. Before this understanding, setting limits on what you give in a relationship feels like a betrayal of the love itself, like choosing to love less, like a failure of the generosity that the love calls for. And the absence of boundaries in the giving produces the kind of depletion that eventually threatens the love itself. After this understanding, boundaries become a form of love rather than a limitation of it. The recognition that you are a conduit and not the source changes the way you manage what flows through you. A conduit that is properly maintained carries more over a longer period than a conduit that is overextended and eventually breaks. And someone who has genuinely received this understands that protecting their capacity to love is not selfishness. It is stewardship. It is the responsible management of a gift that was placed in them not just for the people in front of them today, but for the people they will be called to serve across the full length of their life and their mission. The third transformation is in their capacity to receive love as well as give it. Because one of the most consistent patterns in people who love the way you love is a profound difficulty in receiving, in accepting care, in allowing someone else to give to them in the way they give to others. This difficulty is not false modesty. It is the deeply formed habit of someone who has spent so long being the one who gives that the posture of receiving feels unfamiliar, even uncomfortable, even slightly threatening in the vulnerability it requires. Someone who has genuinely understood that they are a conduit rather than a source begins to develop a different relationship with receiving. They begin to understand that receiving, allowing others to love them, allowing God to replenish them directly, is not a sign of weakness or need. It is the necessary maintenance of the conduit through which their love flows. And as this understanding settles in, the specific and costly love they carry begins to flow with a steadiness and a sustainability that the depletion and guilt cycle could never produce. The fourth transformation, the deepest and most lasting, is in the quality of the love itself. Because love that flows from a replenished conduit, love that is given from a place of genuine fullness rather than desperate obligation, love that is offered without the silent resentment that depleted giving eventually produces. This love has a different quality, a different texture, a different impact on the people who receive it. It carries something that the depleted love cannot carry. Not because the heart behind the depleted love was less genuine, but because the fullness behind the replenished love adds a dimension that exhaustion removes. And the people who receive this love, even if they cannot name what is different, feel the difference immediately. Chosen. I want to finish with this. The love you carry is one of the rarest and most precious things in the world, not because it is perfect, not because it has never cost you more than it should have, not because you have always given it wisely or to the right people or in the right way, but because it is real, because it stays, because it gives, when giving is costly, and shows up when showing up requires more than is comfortable, and carries what others cannot carry in the lives of people who needed exactly that kind of love at exactly that moment in their lives. God placed this love in you on purpose, not to deplete you, not to exhaust you, not to leave you with less than you started with at the end of every season of giving, but to flow through you toward the specific people and the specific missions and the specific moments for which your love was designed, and the cost that this love has asked of you. Every season of giving beyond what you had, every relationship where you carried more than was carried in return, every moment where the giving left you emptied and wondering whether it was worth it, was never outside his awareness, was never outside his accounting, was never outside the precise and intentional plan he has for what your love is building in the world. You are not the source of what you give, you are the conduit, and the source behind you does not run dry, does not get depleted, does not need to calculate the cost before giving, because the giving never diminishes what remains. Let him replenish what the giving has cost. Let him fill what the loving has emptied. Let him be the source of what you carry, so that what flows through you is not limited by your own reserves, but by his inexhaustible capacity to love through those. He has chosen to carry his love into the world. Your love has not been wasted, not a single act of it, not a single moment of costly presence, not a single season of carrying more than was carried in return. God is not unjust. He sees it all, he records it all, and what he has been building through the love you carry, in the lives of those you loved, and in your own life, and in dimensions of the spiritual reality that you cannot yet fully see, will be fully visible on the day when what the love was always building is finally revealed. What breaks you open is what lets the light in.